You're going to learn how to profit from things that only make most people poorer. This is Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold.
What's better, existing property or new construction property? Well, with like most answers in real estate, it depends. Hi, I'm Keith Weinhold. This is Get Rich Education. Let's talk about the pros and cons of existing property, which alternatively I'll call resale property, versus a brand new construction home. We're generally talking about income rental property here if you own a property that you rent to someone else, but a lot of this is going to apply to you if you're looking to buy a primary residence as well. Before we look at your trade-offs with each type, understand that up until maybe 5 years ago, new construction rental property really wasn't a very common thing. That's because during the housing crisis of 2007 to 2009, the supply of homes was so high, we were in such an overbuilt and oversupplied condition that prices had fallen so far that it really didn't make much sense to bring any new construction property online. And since prices were artificially low back then, prices had fallen below the replacement cost of the property. So therefore it wouldn't even be feasible for a builder to build a home because they could not sell it for as much as it cost them to build it in the first place. So things needed to correct, and have they ever. Our supply got absorbed to a substantial degree, and today we're in an undersupplied housing market and see more new construction needs to be built to get us back into balance so that demand can somewhat meet supply again. Supply really needs to catch up. And by the way, this undersupply of housing really helps keep prices buoyant. Let's look at the advantages of both resale property, meaning someone's lived there before, and brand new construction property. The pros, the pluses of existing resale property are that generally you're going to pay a lower purchase price for that than you would brand new construction. And hey, as I go through all these pros and cons, understand that I need to speak in generalities here. I'm sure you can look at one or a few of these things and say, oh, I can think of an exception to this or to that or something else. But we look at resale property and the advantages that it has over new construction. You tend to get better cash flow as an investor, and this is especially true in the early years. Oftentimes that property has been renovated when you buy it and you just don't have as much stuff that breaks. So why do you get better cash flow? Why is there a greater gap between the rent income that you get and the expenses that you get? That is largely because you bought at a lower purchase price than you would have to pay for new construction. So therefore, just simply the biggest monthly payment that you have as a landlord, your principal and interest, tends to be lower since you paid a lower purchase price, hence the greater cash flow being that difference between your monthly rent income and your monthly expenses, one of which is that mortgage. Resale property tends to be an established property. It's already been there for a while. There are some advantages here. You already know some things about the property pretty well. For example, you're not likely to see cracks appear in the walls after you buy it because that home has already had time to settle on its foundation if it needs to settle. If you look out in the lawn, you're pretty likely to see some green grass. Well, that means that there is topsoil there that helps support green grass growth, and you tend to have mature landscaping and just an awful lot of pleasing things. Not only do you have an established home, you also have an established neighborhood. In an established neighborhood that's been there for a while, you're more likely to have an 80-foot tall oak tree that's really pleasing to look at and provides some shade and provides a barrier against the wind. So you're in this mature neighborhood. You also already know who your neighbors are, and you know that the neighborhood is not going to just start growing up around you and growing into something that you don't expect. It is established. There is also some investment safety when you buy in an existing neighborhood with this resale property that's already been there for a while. The homeowners that are around you in that neighborhood, since they've tended to live there longer, they tend to have more equity in the property. Well, when people have equity in their homes around you, if there were a downturn, people are less likely to walk away from their homes because they have substantial equity in them. That helps support housing values all around. People are less likely to walk away from their home. That prevents against a foreclosure and a valuation downdrain should that ever happen. You tend to have lower property taxes more or less in a resale home than you do in a new construction home. And you definitely tend to have a better location advantage. And what that means is you're often closer to better amenities like parks and entertainment venues. And residents have shorter commute times too in these resale neighborhoods that are closer to the urban center. Well, that's the sort of thing that helps aid in tenant retention. A person's more likely to stay in a place because it's convenient to a lot of other places and amenities that they want to go to or they have to go to, like their job. So these shorter commute times really help in retaining those tenants. In turnkey income investment property, there tend to be more resale properties out there on the market than there are new construction, although this is changing quickly and the new construction ones are really catching up volume-wise to the number of resale properties available. Another thing you need to think about with the resale homes, since you do have something established and known, are timelines. It's faster to renovate a home than it is build a new home. So timelines are something that's really pretty important. Hey, if you would, you don't have to, but go ahead and hit like on this video if you like it and you think you're getting good value from it. That gives me some feedback that you do indeed like what you're seeing here, and I can produce more content like that. So now that we've talked about resale property, let's look through some of the pros and cons of brand new construction property, which on the surface seems like it's better. And an important thing to understand, especially when we're talking about new construction rental property, oftentimes we're thinking about single family homes here, is a big industry trend in the last 3 to 5 years is the build to rent space. You might see it abbreviated B2R. That just means that contractors go out and build properties that they don't plan to sell to owner occupants like you that might live in it, but those properties are being built specifically to specifications that cater to renters. So an investor like you can buy that build to rent property and sell it to somebody else. So therefore a builder would build it with more durable finishes. For example, they're probably more likely to use vinyl plank floor, something that's going to stand up, which is a lot like hardwood laminate flooring, rather than something like a deep plush carpet that 1 or 2 tenants could wear out. With new construction property, you tend to have better appreciation. Long-term capital appreciation happens to be better in new construction properties than it is resale. You also tend to retain a better quality tenant and attract a better tenant in the first place. Just think about it. Oftentimes, if a tenant has, say, damaged credit and they can't get a mortgage for their own home, they're going to be pretty happy staying in a brand new construction home, especially a rental home. It would be difficult for them to find a better situation in that. So it's more likely that you're going to retain a tenant longer term and therefore not have vacancy and turnover, which is really disruptive to one's cash flow. And in general as well, single family homes attract a better quality of tenant than duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and generally the larger you go, the more the tenant quality goes down. You tend to have fewer maintenance costs. That's something that's really important over time. You have everything from a brand new roof to brand new appliances and everything in between, so you're just going to have fewer components that wear out. You have modern amenities and layouts with things like open floor plans. Therefore, you might have a higher bathroom count than you would in a 70-year-old property. So you have these features that really cater to how people live today, real modern amenities. Newer features, really what they do is they attract a broader tenant pool that you can choose from because there's so much desire for these amenities and you really can get a better quality tenant that way. You tend to have lower property insurance costs with a new construction property than you do with a resale property, and this is important to you as a landlord. As a landlord, your expenses are typically the mortgage principal, the mortgage interest, the insurance, the taxes, the maintenance, and that property manager's fee if you choose to use a property manager. New construction properties tend to have better vendor warranties. New construction properties tend to have more energy efficiencies in them, so therefore the utility cost is more likely to be lower. Now in single family homes, the utility cost is something that's typically borne on the tenant. All those utility costs like gas and electricity and trash, they can all be outsourced to the tenant in a single family home. Typically with the more units that you get in a rental property, the more and more expenses are going to be borne on you as the landlord. One downside of new construction property, and so few people think about this, is after you close and you buy the property, added costs. We're talking about things that oftentimes you don't think of until you get inside the home and then you realize you need them, like window treatments, like blinds or curtains, or something like you're in your closet but now you need to buy a closet organizer and make measurements and be sure it fits in the space and have to buy that and have to figure that out. So a lot of that stuff's already built in for you with the resale property. So those are a number of pros and cons between resale property and new construction property. Oftentimes there's more than meets the eye there. You do want to have that inspection. And maybe you're thinking, well, in a new construction home, what could go wrong? Why would I need to pay a few $100s, which is really a good idea. It's really a good idea to get that inspection. It's really cheap insurance for you. Well, how do you know that the property was constructed well, or that the flooring isn't delaminating a few weeks after it was put down? You really need that third-party inspection. It's cheap insurance. I can't think of any instance in which you shouldn't get it. I know you might be tempted to with the shortage of supply on the market, but I really suggest that you get it. I always do. Every property I've ever bought, I've had a third-party property inspection, new construction or existing. And you know, when it comes to components or things wearing out, I rarely own a property more than 7 to 10 years for other reasons. Typically, you have so much equity build up in your property that it oftentimes makes sense to sell that and exchange it for 2 more properties tax-free. I rarely hold onto a property much longer than that. And when my hold time does not exceed 7 to 10 years, I don't have any of these big capital expenses like a heater going out or like something going wrong with the windows or like having to replace a roof or anything like that. And with single family homes, I can often sell those to owner-occupant buyers. I have a big buyer pool. I don't have to sell that to another investor, so the numbers don't necessarily need to make sense to my buyer down the road. That's really a success formula. I'm Keith Weinhold. If you're interested in looking at turnkey property, greturnkey.com. It's where I do my own buying. Just copy me. Just do what I do. Again, this has been Get Rich Education. Thanks so much for stopping by our YouTube channel.